that we've been seeing throughout the day. Of course, social media also ablaze. The general public also concerned about those developments. But let's try and tackle the legal implications of this story. And we're now joined by the constitutional expert, Shadrack Gutto. Thank you very much for joining us on the line, Prof. It's an extraordinary day. Lots of reaction, left, right and centre. I'm just wondering, from what you've observed, what are your immediate legal concerns about what's developed today?
The developments are worrying and I think should concern every citizen of the Republic. First of all, I think it's a situation here where we are dealing with a state-owned enterprise, which is an organ of state, and we are seeing here people being played around with in the deployment paradigm of the ruling party, the ANC. So it is deploying people. They moved Mr. Molefe to Parliament, and all of a sudden, within a few days, he is back in a state-owned enterprise. So I think that this is the politics of deployment rather than really people being going through the proper channels, such as public interview of persons and the way we do with other institutions of the state, such as those in Chapter 9 institutions and so on. This has not been done, and I think we need to correct this kind of behavior because it is playing around with even people who are talented, and I think that Brian Molefe is a very talented young man, but he's being played around with as if it's a football, and he's being kicked around by politicians who don't really think.
Okay. Prof. Gutto, if I could interrupt, because we don't have too much time, but I'm just wondering, Minister Lynn Brown was at pains today to say, look, you know, Brian Molefe has done nothing wrong. He hasn't been found guilty of anything. Where does the public protector's findings fit into this equation, and should more consideration be taken? I mean, the judicial inquiry hasn't happened. It may not happen. So in the interim, what is his status?
Well, he is back on his job, and I think he will remain there, but the legal process will mean that the matter will be taken to court. I don't know who is going to take it there. I think the various political parties have indicated they will do so, but also I think there are going to be public interest groups that will join those political parties in taking the matter for review. By Lynn Brown, Minister Lynn Brown saying he's not been found guilty in a court of law. But when matters go to the court of law, then the same politicians say the courts are being used for political reasons. And I think that that's part of the problem. So it is clumsy. It is one which is damaging the integrity of state-owned enterprises such as Eskom and so on. And I think it reflects problems of the so-called state capture. But at the same time, the public protector's report cannot be said not to be binding or have relevance until you go to the courts of law, because already there have been decisions which have been made on that in the courts, indicating that they are binding effect unless they are reviewed. So I think that we are dealing here with a really very serious situation.
All right, Prof. The other thing is we've got the ruling party saying that this was unfortunate and even reckless, and they were embarrassed by the decision taken by the Public Enterprises Minister. So people at home are busy trying to figure out, hang on, the ANC is the ruling party, Lynn Brown is a deployee of the ruling party. Will we have a situation like the SABC where questions will be raised about the the Parliament's oversight on public enterprises, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that the situation, what you are explaining, is really more or less the same as that of the SABC and so on, and it is escalating. And I believe that it's a question of failure of governance, proper governance, and I think that it is not just Lynn Brown who, is engaged in this. This is coming from the top of leadership in terms of the executive in the country. So the executive is getting itself in a lot of problems. Decisions that it makes are questionable and are destroying the image of good governance in the country, constitutional democracy in the country. There are basic principles that govern how all of this ought to happen, but they are not happening. So I think that we are in a situation here that Minister Lynn Brown is just one of the tools that are being used in the process, and she's muddling herself. And, Brian Molefe is just a footballer, as I've already said, being kicked around, even though he has a lot of talent and a lot of things he can do, but he's just being played around with. And I believe that Eskom is in a terrible situation, including questions of nuclear energy and so on. Those are hidden behind all of this movement.
Okay, Prof. Gutto, we've run out of time, but very, very quick question. The ANC perhaps is in a bit of a quandary here, because on the one hand, they're saying that this guy should not avail himself of this position because of this cloud that's over his head. But at the same time, he was good enough to deploy as an MP in Parliament. So are they suggesting, in your view, that the level or the standard to be an MP is set at a much lower level than that of being a CEO of the state entity, of the power utility?
It is a crisis within leadership within the ANC, and it is terrible because it is damaging institutions, damaging the image of Parliament, damaging the image of state-owned enterprises, accountability, transparency, openness, and so on. So yes, this is one of those instances which is adding to the crisis of governance within the ruling party, and the ruling party has to wake up, otherwise it is going to begin to sink slowly and slowly. Yeah.
Okay. Professor Shadrack Gutto, constitutional law expert, thank you very much indeed for your time this evening. Francis?